Like your whole financial life seems like a good idea at the time until you learn better, right?
Yeah, you can question every decision you want if you like, right? I mean, I think if you asked Lori 2 days ago, she might have agreed that buying a nice drone at this juncture might be a financial mistake. But I followed that up by doing a consulting call and paying for the drone, so no mistake.
I told you, man, you're supposed to just take it out of her sinking fund for fun stuff. It's paid for.
Yeah, she doesn't look at the budget, right?
She's not into the numbers, man. So too bad.
Not at all. Yep.
There's consequences.
There are always consequences.
Two lifelong friends document and share their personal stories as they seek financial independence and to retire early. One reaches FIRE in 2020 during a global pandemic, inspiring the other to play catch up. This is Two Sides of FIRE. One of the ways I thought about framing the discussion, and you can tell me if you think this is a good idea or a bad idea, but just this idea that there's a progression of mistakes that build on one another. And I feel like I got to a point of financial literacy in my 40s, finally. Okay. I mean, it took me a long time, but I ended up making all of these mistakes in my early years, my 20s, 30s, leading into my 40s. And I think they're not uncommon mistakes when you look back at it, because they're a function of, when you're young, a function of your parents or the financial operating system that was in existence in your house, wherever you grew up.
Yeah.
Then you go to college and there's a certain set of, or not, you graduate high school and you go into the working world, you go to college, there's a set of financial circumstances there that you're presented with. And then, and you start building on assumptions or ideas that you had learned when you were younger. And if those are false assumptions or bad ideas or limiting beliefs, you're starting to build on these mistakes. And then you get into your 30s and you start earning more money potentially. And so I don't know if that's mistakes. Yeah. And I don't know if that's a good way of framing this discussion, but it's kind of, when I started thinking back on it, I was like, oh, wow. You can think about your most recent mistake, but when you trace it back, it all kind of lands, for me at least, in my teens, where I'm just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you budget when you were in high school? Did you ever think about budgeting or no?
No, but I don't know. I don't think I spent a ton of money in high school, or at least the money I spent.
Yes, you did.
It was very directed, right? It was like,
you bought a car.
I had a car. Yeah, but I knew I wanted a car from the time I was like 13. And that's when I started working, right? I was doing babysitting and odd jobs and stuff. And I was saving for a car. And except for bad habits as a teen, like smoking, where I had to spend money for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe fishing lures, right? Things like that. I didn't spend a ton until I got a little older, I think. When you think about like how we spent our summers and stuff. But no, I definitely didn't budget, to answer your question. No budget.
As a portion of your net worth, buying a car was had to be like 80% of your net worth, right?
Yes, for my the very nice cars that I bought. You'll remember the first one was, I believe, $100, and that had no floorboards in it. The next one was a big step up. I think Dad had to help me. That might have been $700. Dude, well, what about you? I mean, did you start a saver? Like you started working pretty young, at least summers.
Yeah, I saved money, all with the goal of buying things, and I remember saving up to buy a $600 amp.
Dude, I was so jealous of that amp.
It was huge, and for no reason. Like it was
totally a reason.
18-inch speaker on the bottom, two 10-inch speakers on the top, 150-watt head. I lived in an apartment building. I had no business buying this amp. Like my mother and father would go to eat down in town, and they'd come home. My mother would come up to my room. I can hear you playing all the way down on Main Street.
It's like I barely remember you playing that thing loudly ever.
Oh man, well, that's
because you couldn't.
No, I couldn't really. No,
my amp was like the size of a laptop at that time, maybe a little bigger, right? I had a micro bass, the PV.
Yeah.
There was no making that thing loud. It just sounded like ass if you turned it up all the way.
But when you play in a band, like I remember a few times when we all got together and like played at serious like performance level, like then it made sense. It made perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing that could make any of the bands we were in better would be to play louder.
So you couldn't actually hear it.
Proper distortion.
Yeah. But it's funny when I was thinking back on that. So it was $600 for that. It was like a lot of money for me at the time. Obviously, you said you bought a $700 car. But fast forward to like when I'm in my like late 30s here, I started playing guitar instead of bass. I bought this ridiculous amp. I did it again, like two 10-inch speakers. It was a PV, like insane amp for my house. I mean, I had two young kids in this house. So the house behind me here, and I wasn't in a band. I was nothing, man. I was playing in the studio or in the house. And and again, I made the same stupid mistake, right?
Let's talk about why. Cause I bet that's just as important as the what. So you had all these years to learn, right? From your previous mistakes. Why did you buy? Maybe the answer is different this time. Like, why did you buy such a big amp?
I think we just buy things to make ourselves feel good in the moment. I don't know. There's just a lot of that consumer culture that is just baked into who we are. I mean, you bought a drone this week, right?
I did.
You didn't need a drone. No. I mean, and yet you were justifying, well, I can use it for this or that. And I was feeding into that. I was like, oh man.
You were totally feeding into it. I actually blame you.
He's going to buy this thing.
I gave you 80-20 odds that day.
No, it started off at like 60-40.
Yeah, I know. I was selling myself short.
Like 30 seconds later, it was up to 80-20.
I know myself too well.
It's bought.
Yeah, it's basically bought. I had already made the plan.
But why'd you buy that?
Because I can, right? It fits into, pretty discretionary level of spending, given how little of that I tend to do. Yeah. I looked at it as an opportunity to do more of something that I liked doing anyway, but I'd only done it at the very much hobbyist level. And I just started thinking like, well, maybe this will turn into something else, right? I like the idea of learning a lot more about videography because it's always been more appealing to me than static photography. Yeah. And it's a very different, angle, right? If you will, on the whole thing, the idea of being aerial and taking photos, taking video. So I liked that. No like plan or guarantee that it's going to turn into anything more than a hobby, but it could. Who knows? I don't know. And yeah, I mean, but sure, like when you buy things like that, I think it's a very normal reaction, right? There's a boost when you purchase something that's really nice. I think especially I have found as I've gotten older and earned more and such, it's like, oh, I couldn't have bought this before, right, but now I can.
Yeah.
So like, I'm going to go buy it. It's going to feel great.
You and I both went to college. Yep. And you end up spending this insane amount of money it's so abstract because first of all, you're not even touching it, right? You've never earned the sums of money that they're requesting from you at college. Right. It's just flowing through your fingers without you really even appreciating the colossal scale to which you're putting yourself in debt. At least it was that way for me. I don't know. I mean, I had some financial aid. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, and it's kind of tough to dial the clock back sometimes. I didn't think that much about the debt being incurred. I had gotten a good amount of financial aid, both privately and from the school. And then my parents and I each had loans that were going to come due when I got out. And I honestly didn't think about it that much.
The thing for me in college, that was the first time I had a credit card and your parents have to co-sign for that.
Me too.
So there was this idea that you needed to build up a credit history, that was important. Yes. But I don't know about you, but I didn't pay attention to the interest rate on that thing. It's just like, oh, it's a credit card. It's
interesting.
It's what you have.
I was afraid of it. I was terrified of the credit card, honestly. Yeah, maybe this is a difference. I'd love to talk about this. For me, I knew I had to have that credit card. I remember signing up for the secured credit card. I mean, man, what was that first one? Like $500 or $1,000, something like that. It was so little.
The credit line,
I would use it and then pay it off. Yeah. And I used it for so few things because I was terrified of like the having to owe more money. And sure. I don't know where that came from, honestly, because I don't recall that my parents got into trouble with credit cards or anything like that. I don't think I saw anybody struggle with credit cards until a little later in life. A good friend in college, actually, and then some other family members. But I was so afraid of that. I don't know why. Well, how about you? So you had that credit card going to college, and did you have any issues with credit then, or maybe, just getting out of college?
In college, I had 3 jobs. So I worked a graphic design
Yeah,
job. I worked for a guy who was, building cabinets. I was doing shop drawings for him. And then I also had work study. So I was working in student life, housing. And that is something that my parents always instilled in me from high school, that you work for what you want. And I know you were
sure.
the same way, even though you chose not to work in college, because
In college.
you did a lot of, working in high school and of course working through summers. But those jobs allowed me some kind of spending money. So I definitely
Yeah.
used the credit card. The way that was set up was my mother and father, I think, co-signed for that, right? Like, I think that was
Yeah.
required because I had no credit history. And so I would just send the money home to them. And there was a period
Okay.
there that I was making those regular payments, but the payments somehow got mixed up, and the card was not paid. And so I got into like pretty early trouble with the credit cards. I was like,
Oh,
oh, I
okay.
thought I was paying this off, So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I never really had a problem where I would carry like a big balance month to month, just because psychologically it just never felt that great. If you look at the flip side of the balance sheet, the college loans were just building up and building up. Laura and I were dating pretty seriously by the end of her college term. So when her 4 years was up, she went on to grad school.
Right.
And she was then living off of student loans. And when I graduated architecture school and we moved in together, we went where she was going to school. We used her loans for like food, and
Yeah.
she used some of it to buy a car, like a
Yeah.
new car.
I remember when you told me that, I like inside was very concerned. And I honestly,
Really?
Eric, can't remember if I said anything out loud, because I figured like that reckoning is going to come. But honestly, because I'm such a chicken about like things that appear confrontational, I have no idea if I shared that concern or if I was just like, oh,
No, you
because
definitely.
I totally remember we talked about it.
You know what? You didn't share it, but also,
Damn it.
I I don't like you. I don't feel like we really had any other choice. I mean, I was
Yeah.
making a small amount of money in my first job. Laura was making, a TA's stipend basically, which is nothing, and going to school. And we were living in the cheapest place we could possibly find near where she was going to grad school. And
Right.
so none of it felt negotiable to me. And also, I mean, this kind of sets up maybe one of the larger financial mistakes that I see when you're in your 20s. That's your chance to be saving, right? That's where
Totally.
you can put your money to work, and it has the most earning potential over your entire working career. And I didn't savings account. That idea basically disappeared when I was 16.
Wow.
After I
Okay.
bought that amp and drained the savings account, there was no savings account after that. Did you have one? I mean, were you saving in your 20s? Don't tell me you were.
Uh, okay. So in my 20s, I mean, I did get a 401k at my first job.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think I made it up to the match, but no more than that.
I did too.
And I definitely didn't get a Roth. I don't know. Maybe they talked about it at that same seminar as the 401k, but I really don't think so.
I
I
doubt
feel like
it.
I would
Yeah.
remember that. So I didn't know about that. Didn't know about HSAs. So none of that. I may have had like a very small emergency savings of like $1,000 or a couple $1,000 because I'm
Well,
a
that's more
paranoid person.
Yeah, that's more than
But
I
it
had.
definitely wasn't any 3 months or 6 months or anything like that. No.
I mean, you're right to say I was excited to start saving for retirement at that first job, and they offered it, after a 1 year waiting period. It was some kind of grace period.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they offer you the, very limited options, which mine, I think I've talked about this before. They were all these front loaded mutual
Exactly.
funds, 5.75% front loaded mutual funds. So, just not great options. So, but I did actually consider that saving, and I was excited to do that. So I guess I always maybe had that as a mental framework that I was relying on, but never, it was never a serious look at my finances to say, where could I be spending less? Because in your 20s, I feel like spending is a big part of your life. You spend for fun. Your friends are starting to get married. You're probably spending on, going to weddings and all of that kind of thing. You're traveling finally, maybe,
Yeah.
even if it's not extravagant or how you might picture yourself traveling. You're doing like hostel stays or you're camping or something like that. But, I feel like a lot of that, the optics on your financial plan is very in the moment. Like,
I think that's fair. Yeah. Probably for most people.
yeah. Yeah. But
Right.
no general big overarching plan to, I want to retire someday. Well, okay, that's very far in the future. So I'll stick in this retirement account. Maybe one day that'll amount to something, but nothing other than that. There's no other grand plan to kind of tax optimize. Like you said, Roth, like a Roth
Yeah.
IRA.
No,
All of
I
the
didn't know the
years
term.
that I could have contributed to that. That's why I'm trying to teach my kids about it when they're young. Like both my kids have Roths. I'm like, here's how it works. Because I wish someone had sat me down and said, when I was earning less than $12,000 a year, contribute to this. Now you'll be happy you did.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome thing that you did. I can't get my 15-year-old to do any kind of work like that yet. So she has no earned income, and I don't have a business that's producing enough where I can pay her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
are you doing Roths now? Cause I feel like at a certain point you kind of, you earn out of the structure where you can even take advantage of it.
Yeah, there was a point where I was doing Roth conversions while I was still working. Not the best time to do it, but we had modeled out a bunch of different scenarios, and it made sense to do my traditional IRA, to convert my traditional IRA contributions, because that had been part of my strategy for a while. Financial order operations, right? Eventually got to after-tax IRA, but yeah, I have a Roth, and it will come in handy at some point, but it's hanging out doing its thing, much like my my HSA does.
Yeah,
but,
I had an HSA at like, I think 2 different jobs. The employer had funded it and I had funded it. There was this kind of matching thing because they couldn't. It was like a high deductible healthcare plan, and they're like, "Oh, we'll just fund half of your HSA for the year, the full contribution." So I had this like pot of money in there, and when I left, I was like, I need Band-Aids, I need like tourniquets, like first aid
tourniquets.
kit.
What do you guys do at your house? I agree with you. I didn't have any kind of grandiose saving strategy at my very first job. I think at my second job, I started putting more into my 401k, went way beyond the match, maybe up to the max, but I doubt it. But it was higher. And then I got divorced. And like in many cases, there's a negotiation involved. And I was in my third job at the time, and I was at a startup, and there was a potential for, like any startup, right? This could pay off. It could become something big. Spoiler alert, it did not. Did not pay off in any way, shape, or form. However, I had a lot of stock options, and there was a lot of ways that negotiation could have gone. And for me, basically to make it go away, I offered up my current retirement account, my first 2 jobs, 401k, and that put all of the claims to bed that were being made. And when I think now, I refuse to do the math, by the way. When I think now about what that first 3 years of saving would have been worth 23 years later, it's kind of shocking.
Oh man.
But I mean, candidly, I had a lot of faith in the company I was at that time. I really felt like it could be something. And like I said, just emotionally, I wanted, a difficult situation for both of us to go away. It's a missed opportunity, right? I guess the question is, was that the smartest move?
Sunk cost.
Is there something I could have done differently? Should I have kind of fought it out? It was an emotional, in some respects, decision. Yeah. It was financially motivated as well, but who knows? But I think about it sometimes. It doesn't weigh on my heart here, but that's a big chunk of money translated 23 years later. So I hope it led to good things elsewhere, but not for me.
When you think of the range of financial mistakes, divorces have to fit up there pretty high in terms of scale of things that can go wrong, right?
Yeah,
I mean, half your net worth. Or I don't know what percentage of your net worth that represented, but I mean, it also
at that time quite a bit.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah.
Yeah, because at that time we didn't own a house, still had used cars, right? No,
man, that's
from a net worth perspective, it was real. Yeah, and there was some marital debt too that I agreed to take on. So,
big mistakes in my 20s were just not. The biggest one I can think of is not saving. The very end of my 20s, Laura and I got married. To be honest, I don't know how old I was when I got married. I feel like I was probably 30, maybe 30. I feel like that's when everyone, except for you, was getting married. And
I feel like you were a little under 30, but yeah.
okay, so end of the 20s, transitioning to the 30s, that's when you start spending on these kind of big things like
Yeah.
a house or a wedding. I mean, for us, it was a wedding. And I remember Laura's father saying, "Hey, you're asking for this sum of money." It was like $9,000, something like that.
Okay.
And he's, his share of the kind of wedding costs, which sounds ridiculous, for one day. Right. And he's like, "Happy to give this to you. I'm also happy just, for the wedding. But I'm also happy just to write you the check and you can spend it on a down payment for a house, which is what I would recommend." And, of all the people I think in both Laura and my life, who have treated finances with any degree of seriousness, it would be him. And so we obviously didn't take that advice. We're like, we got the wedding, it's like a big party for our friends. It's like this gateway from childhood to adulthood. And it's just, we had no other way of paying for it. It's like, it's this big party that we somehow have to afford, but we couldn't really afford it. So again, it's that spending without really having it. That kind of mentality was still in existence at that point. And we were making pretty modest salaries in our professional jobs at that point. And, so I think just that idea of spending money just on a frivolous one day event is kind of crazy. But I mean, I forget when did you start making those big financial decisions that everyone makes, like the house? Didn't you buy a house
I waited to buy a house until 2006. So okay. I was 33.
No kidding.
We always rented. Yeah,
okay,
we
I didn't
rented.
Realize that. Yeah.
And some of that was just, I felt pretty strongly that, and still do, if you don't know you're going to be somewhere, no, for 5 years or preferably 10. Buying a house is a very risky thing, and I might get flamed apart for saying real estate isn't an investment, but I firmly believe that a primary residence is a poor idea of an investment. Certainly a very risky one. And I was very honest about the fact that, with the whole leveling up approach to how I wanted to manage my career, we were probably going to move around a lot. Certainly, the first couple jobs taught me that was probably the case, and it continued to be the case. And we did move out of state and in state quite a few times. Man, I tallied it up the other day. It was like 15 times.
Oh my God.
So we weren't going to buy a house, and we didn't. And, it wasn't until we had our daughter, we moved back from Maine to Connecticut, that we said, right, our careers are at the right point. We think we're going to, stay put for a while. Let's buy a house.
Yeah.
Now, on one hand, I think that was a super responsible decision, like a good time for us, but on the other hand, like not so much, because we bought when the market was still super high, and it did not stay there. So, fast forward 5 years later, when I had the opportunity to move to California, the market was way down, and so I ended up having to sell a house underwater. And when I say had to, I say that because the town we lived in had basically no rental market.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, why didn't you just rent it?
I couldn't afford to carry a mortgage and a Bay Area rent for certain. We were pretty, we were on a budget when we first moved to California for sure.
Right.
So we sold it. And thankfully I had, I was in a good negotiation point with my company for the move. I was able to get them to split the difference on the loss I was going to take. So I only paid half the loss, but that was still more than 20 grand.
Yeah. Wow.
That I had to pay out of pocket. Loss. It's a big loss. So when I think of financial mistakes, I sort of like fight with myself whether that's a mistake because it ended up enabling something really positive. But it was certainly a financial step in a wrong direction that didn't feel very good at the time. And moving to California turned out to be great, but man, that's a big hit.
Yeah. It's funny that you said 2006 was when you bought, because we built this house in 2007, bought the raw land, and that was right before the housing crash. And they were still giving out, they were just throwing money at people who just had no business borrowing, including us probably at the time. This was like a zero down arrangement. It was very, very small money down, and we had to pay closing costs, and, we had to put up some earnest money. But I mean, sum total, it's probably like 3% of the purchase price is what we put down. So that meant, we had to have PMI and all the garbage that comes with it. I really saw that, though, for me as an architect, as an investment in, I'm going to design this thing, and this is going to be piece number one in my like personal portfolio. So it didn't feel like a financial mistake, and it felt like something that Laura and I had been just working toward, but we didn't save for it. It wasn't because we were good savers or that we really should have been buying that. And I'm glad that we did. Real estate market here has never, we've never been underwater on the real estate market on an island. There's limited amount of land.
Right. Inventory.
Yeah. Inventory is it's always scarce here. So I feel like that was an okay decision, but in that time is when you start having kids and, it's same for you. Right. And you get all of these other costs that appear, daycare and diapers and formula and all of the activities that your kids do. And I feel like that decade, like between 30 and 40, it was just about survival for us.
That whole decade, huh?
Well, just making it work. I mean, we were both professionals working, but we live in a remote place. I mean, we're not getting paid. We're not getting the same kind of Bay Area salaries, but cost of living here is a lot lower, but I feel like that time, instead of us really taking a critical look at what we were spending, what was coming in and what was going out, we were just spending and trying to have fun with the family. We'd go on progressively better and better vacations, but we weren't saving. We just it just wasn't really happening. We were doing the minimum for probably retirement savings, but again, when you're 30, it's not adding up to much. So you look at it and you're like, should I keep doing this, or is there a better use of this money? That's kind of how I looked at it,
We did start a 529 early, saving education savings for our daughter. Yeah, but we didn't contribute very much. We did it monthly, but it was pretty modest. And, when I think back, we got really lucky because we were able to end up doing some catch-up contributions later on, taking some bonus pay and putting it towards that. Yeah. Otherwise, it would have been a very different conversation with our daughter. So, I mean, maybe it's crisis averted. That's something I would put out there and I would hang on us. Like Lori had the awesome idea to do a 529 pretty early. She did all the research, found a good plan because our state plans weren't good in Connecticut and there was no tax deduction. But actually, no, we were still in Maine. So all about it.
There's no tax deduction for 529s here. Right. And the state plan isn't that great, but they do have a matching grant. And that I'll say is the only reason why we started one. But we started, the kids were maybe 5, probably 3 and 5 when we started, but we literally just did the bare amount to get the match. Whatever it was. I was like, well, it's kind of silly that we would walk away from that sort of gift of money. So it was
free money.
Yeah. And it was like a 1-for-1 match on whatever, some small amount of money. It wasn't huge, but we weren't contributing with any kind of diligence because we both just assumed, looking at the, projected rate of rise of college costs, there's no way we could possibly save enough that it would make a difference. And we also figure, we just said, these kids are going to have to rely on merit scholarships because, we're two working professionals who are probably going to be crowded out of the need market too, which is, I don't know. I'm sure that's where you're going to be. And we're definitely there now,
For sure.
So not saving. I think the theme here is not saving.
Not saving enough early enough, right? I think you started to say it earlier. We didn't take advantage of those earliest years where you get the benefit of compounding, you get the benefit of tax advantaged, accounts. We talked about Roths, for example, and, we just didn't do that stuff. So, when I read, on Reddit or wherever about these 20 somethings maxing out all those things, that's fantastic, right? That's awesome. Going to pay for itself a million times over. I certainly didn't do that.
I can't imagine what their life must look like though.
Well, some of them are a pretty scarcity mindset and
Yeah,
headed for lean fire, and that's a valid choice, of
totally.
course.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been ready to make that choice myself.
Some of this is a mindset issue because now that, as I roll into my 40s and I have some awareness around the responsibilities that I have to my kids, to my
Yeah,
parents, to my spouse, everything starts to come into better focus.
sure.
And, you start to understand that, I'm thankful that we've been able to save for college but it's only been because of the past couple of years and those, the income
Yeah,
that the business has made. But I mean,
yeah. So you caught up too,
caught up.
basically. You were able to do more.
Yeah. And finally feel like I'm just way more focused on it,
Yeah,
and I'm trying to think to my kids, how am I going to prevent them from making these same mistakes? Because there's a certain amount of that you just have to make. Like Henning the other day, he failed his first driving test. And so here in Maine, in order to schedule your second one, you need to physically fill out a form, put
okay.
it in the mail with a check, and send it to Augusta. He puts in the envelope cash, like a wad of cash, because that's how he's getting paid for his ring business right now. And does the envelope make it to Augusta? No, it doesn't make it to Augusta because he put it in the mailbox at the road. And as is bound to happen around here, people go to mailboxes and they steal any envelope that looks like it has cash in it.
Of course.
Which was his, I'm sure. I mean, maybe something else happened, but it's just these money lessons that you learn. I said, well, you'll probably never send cash in the mail again. And so I want him to make those mistakes, just like you want your kids to have these lessons for themselves. But then there are certain ones like the Roth that would be a big mistake to walk away from, knowing what like you and I know.
Yeah.
And also, how do you teach your kids to be savers?
It's hard. I mean, I'll tell you, I gave it one really
one shot.
One deliberate attempt so far, and as yet it hasn't met with a lot of success. We set up a what do you call them, a UTMA account, Guardian account for your kid. They've had a couple different names over the years, but we put like $5,000 in it, and we said, anything you contribute to this, we will match.
Oh, that's cool.
And our daughter would get gifts from people and what have you, but she wouldn't, more than a couple of times she wouldn't do this, even though I showed her, and she's good at math, even though she hates math, she's good at it. I would show her the graph. I'm like, look at what this money could be in 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, so here's what it's going to look like if you never put money in it again. And here's what it looks like if you put anything in it. And I'm matching it. That's free money. So she wouldn't do it. She'd rather put it in her savings account because then the money will be there if she needs to spend it. What I told her was, obviously Lori's in on this. This is not just my idea. Here's your education account. This is going to be more than enough to pay for state university.
Right. Yeah.
And it'll pay for a good portion of another state's public university. But you want to go to private university, you're going to be taking out loans for that.
Yeah.
This UTMA account at 20 years old, it's going to look like this, 30 years old, and so on. It's going to look like that. You could use this for a blowout wedding if you want. I'm not paying for a blowout wedding. Or you could save it, and this could be your down payment on your first house, or it could be, retirement money for you. It could be whatever you want.
It's your dowry.
That's yours, man. It's your dowry. I don't know. So for me, like, I earnestly hope, especially as she gets older, we can have that discussion a little more seriously, because right at 15, it still doesn't feel very serious.
Yeah, it's not happening. Yeah.
Right. But I'm hopeful that at some point it will, because I would love to prevent some of the mistakes that we've talked about and just help her have a leg up on some of that stuff. Because, yes, that struggle teaches you stuff in your, first jobs and everything, but you don't have to have the same degree of struggle to learn those lessons, I think.
True.
Right. So, I mean, if that helps give her a leg up, like, awesome. I feel like that lesson is worthwhile, but I don't know. We'll see. I think the jury's out.
Yeah. The things that worry me most are the habits, the systems. You want to get the savings mindset.
Right.
And the save first, spend what's left over mindset, to me, would have been life-changing, instilled at an earlier age. But I don't know that you can actually change someone's habits. As I look at my two boys, 15 and 17, they are very different. Like they're probably different than Arwen too. And just like everybody else out there, you look at your kids and you can say, okay, one of them is a saver and the other is a spender. They're both really good at their respective duties. And the one who's saving doesn't want to spend on anything, like including things he needs. So it's an interesting problem. The one who's spending would never save. He's the first guy, and I can see him if he goes to college. He's going to be the guy who goes out at the bar and he's like, you forgot your wallet? Don't worry, drinks on me. Like, round
everybody, come on over.
That's him, man.
He's lining up the shooters on the bar.
I am not co-signing his credit card. I'm just going to say that. I'm just not going to do it.
You can already tell. Yeah. You'll sign Sig's credit card though.
You made a guess. You made a guess. Huh?
Just, I mean, I feel like just the amount of data I have made that pretty easy.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Arwen's pretty good. Like she will save, and then when she really wants something, she'll ask to take the money out and spend it. Now, and by and large, it's just dumb like YouTuber stuff, like a way overpriced hoodie, or something like that. I mean, one time it was a $400 gaming chair, but by and large, it's been like $50 things here or there. She's pretty thoughtful with money. I'm kind of shocked that I don't know that we get to take credit for that. I mean, we talk about budgeting. We talk about like, it's the way bigger payoff when you spend on something you really care about, right? And you saved for it.
You think it's not getting through, but I mean, there's some degree of assimilation that just happens.
I hope so.
Because of the way you've structured your household. And I mean, your position right now can't help but be, an education in what to do to become financially successful, right? I mean, she must have some visibility into what got you guys where you are. And I guess the thing that I always want for my kids is I still want them to have the hustle of figuring it out. Like Henning right now is going to be buying the truck from me. And we're looking at, so in order to take his next driving test, the car needs to be, inspected. So the inspection runs out in like a couple of days here. Yeah. And so I said, okay, so in order for this to be inspected, these are the things they're going to look at. And so we're looking at the tires, and we look at the tires, and if they're not going to pass inspection. So I said, okay.
Did you get your little feeler gauge out and check them?
You can just see the wear bars,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They're pretty bad. And so we're looking at that. And so we go and look and see what a new set of tires costs. And, there's that, I want them to own the financial responsibility of what it means to have a car. I don't want to step in and solve that problem for them, and
sure. And I think that's the right approach.
To some degree, like you setting up a UTMA account, that's solving the problem. Just like I'm contributing 2/3 of the cost of the tires and the rims that he wants to buy. Cause the rims are rusty. You can't have rusty rims, Dad. Yeah. That doesn't look good.
Of course not.
So I don't know. I think there is that, instilling those financial values and systems that you feel like have helped you get to where you are. And then also leaving some room for them to make some mistakes, like mailing cash to, re-up their driver's test. That, he'll never do that again. So.